James Day, public television pioneer and chairman of the CUNY TV Advisory Board, passed away in April 2008. His legacy includes the series Day at Night, which aired for 130 episodes beginning in 1973. The program features interviews with many of the great thinkers and achievers of the 20th century. These 30-year-old programs have been restored. The interviews remain fresh and relevant today, exploring issues that are still important to society. Showing them again is CUNY TV's tribute to Jim and his contributions to public television.
For his first 30 years in the theater, including more than 500 roles in television drama, E.G. Marshall was best known for not being very well known at all. In spite of a list of acting credits as long as his arm, he appeared forever destined, as he himself put it, to be the funny little man who came in with a bucket of beer. But all that changed the day he stepped into the lead role in television's dramatic series, The Defenders. It ran 5 years, long enough to make his name a household word and earn him 2 Academy Awards. A well-deserved and long-postponed reward for his many years of thoroughly professional work in the theater, in film, and on television. Mr. Marshall, you have recently begun to act in a radio series. One would have thought that radio drama was long since dead. What prompted you to go into radio?
Well, it's the pioneer spirit, I guess. I pioneered in television, and now radio drama has been effectively dead for about 25 years. A full generation of Americans has grown up.
Did you ever do much radio drama in your earlier years?
But I did quite a bit. I wasn't one of the regulars. Some of the people who appeared, I can mention some names, and they might not be household words anymore, but at one time they were, because that was the entertainment center of the American family. Isn't that true? That we set aside certain periods of time throughout the week when we would listen, the family would listen, and then there were times when mother would listen.
It's curious, it's hard to remember what it is we did when there was nothing to look at, except each other, I suppose.
Well, maybe, I don't know what we did.
Did we sit and look at the
eyes. Yes, if you were really concentrating. I remember if, for example, if the president was speaking, we'd stare right there at that grid very intently to absorb every word and nuance. And with dramas, I guess it would be the same way. Of course, people could do handwork. I don't want to sound anti-feminist or something like that, but knitting was an occupation. And some people could do other work jobs with the hands while listening.
But you don't find it at all strange to be in a radio studio with a script in your hand and instead of in front of the camera?
It's like bicycle riding that you did as a boy, or swimming, that it comes back. The feeling about the distance from the mic and the hand cues and so forth. That's all still there, and to fade on and fade out, the things that became second nature are still second nature.
Well, the academicians, of course, have argued for many years that the theater of the mind is much more vivid than the theater of the stage or the theater of the tube television. But, you know, that's kind of an academic argument. Why is radio drama being brought back?
Well,
that's a practical kind of thing.
When I was told this incident, it gave me goosebumps. An 8-year-old boy was asked why he listened to the radio in preference to television. And he says, because I can see the pictures more clearly. Because the theater of the imagination, which you just spoke of, is that that's what radio did. It excited our imaginations. Now we see it all. And I think we're getting bored with it, because violence or whatever is this kind of activity that goes on television. It's all these cops and robbers things that nothing provokes our imagination anymore. It's we see it all. War, whatever. Now we don't daydream anymore as much as we used to. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. But what interests me about radio is that it's just the words. That you listen to the words, and the writer and the actor and actress and the musician and the sound effects man make this picture. Help you make this picture in your mind, and it is a clearer picture because it's very individual.
What about the actor? Not the receiver, but the actor in this case. His bodily movements, all the things you've used all these years, I suppose are very little used to except the voice.
Right there, yes, everything. Right
Do you
there.
put more into the voice than you would if you were on the stage, for example, because you were so reliant upon that
Yes,
one?
because a hesitation can be done mutely on stage, but a hesitation must be audible. A pause must be audible. Really, one of Gaj Kazan's great phrases was, "Do the pause on the line." So that you must pause audibly on radio, whereas on stage you pause, and that's a pause.
I've made no mention of what it is you are doing, and I think you should mention it.
Oh yes, it's called the CBS Radio Mystery Theater, and it'll be on every night of the week. Not a continuous drama, it'll be a new original drama every night in the week.
And you'll be on each
I'm
of
the
these?
host.
Oh, you're the host, I see.
It's
Will you be taking any dramatic roles as well?
No, we thought about it, and we don't quite know how to do it. E.G. Marshall, as the host, would he become involved in the mystery? Because some of these deal with the occult, some deal with ghost stories, some are mysteries, some are romances, but everything is with something with a mystery to it. And it'll be on at 10:07 every night in the week and for 52 minutes until the news comes on again at 11. So we're going to see what will happen. If there is an audience out there that likes to listen to just words and not watch the tube, as we've been doing now for 20 years.
Yes. How do you feel about the tube? You've earned quite a living and quite a reputation on the tube, even though you had many years of experience on the stage before you came to the tube.
Well, Mr. Day, what alarms me is that not enough has been done real drama. Now, we had Playhouse 90 for a while. We had Studio One, we had Kraft, we had Filker, we had all these shows that did drama, anthology dramas, and omnibus and so on. That's all gone, almost gone completely. And I don't watch television unless it's some special documentary about animals, something of that nature. I don't watch the drama because there is no drama to watch, and I'm not that interested in these television series dramas.
Why not?
They just don't interest me. Perhaps it's something lacking in me, let me be generous to say, because I've been in television since the beginning, but I really enjoyed the live days, the golden days as they're called now. Some of them were pretty poor for gold. There's a lot of dross done then too. But I don't watch the regular television.
What was so exciting about those days, the golden age, when so much live drama was being done? It wasn't even pre-recorded in those days,
The
was
writer would be there, and I can go on and list the names of what we would call great.
What was so good about the writer being there?
Well, because it was a partnership. The director would be there, the producer would be there, the writer would be there, the actors would be there, and we'd sit down and we'd talk about it, and we could really get into it. Now you're shoved a bunch of script with various colors like that, and that's it. And you say, well, what about this scene? This scene doesn't seem to work here. Now, why can't we? No, we've talked about it, that's it. So you're sort of left in the cold.
You're at the end of a long production line, aren't you?
Yeah.
There's no ensemble feeling, I suppose, if everyone is there.
And you point out a glaring error, and there's no one there to correct it. Whereas in the past, the writer would say, I think you're right. I tell you what, you go work on the first act, let me work on this. And he'd come back and say, and that's marvelous, you see. And so it was a really working relationship that was beautiful. Patty Chayefsky and J.P. Miller.
Which ones do you really
Rhodes.
look back upon with such fun as, not the individuals, but the instances or the plays or this?
Well, I guess most people remember Middle of the Night, Patty Chayefsky, Eva Marie St. Delman, Steve Hill, and so on. That was one of the high points. That was television live drama at its finest. And there were some others, too.
Was there a real difference because it happened at that moment,
Oh,
because
yes,
it
of
was
course.
live?
We rehearsed for 10 days.
10 days.
And when we got up,
How
we were
much did
doing-
you rehearse for an episode of The Defenders, for example?
You rarely rehearsed.
Oh?
We shot the whole thing in 6 days. And with a Studio One or something like that, you'd rehearse 10 days, and then you'd have 2 days on camera, so that all your mistakes were intentional.
Did you ever have any untoward experiences where it had to go because it was on at that moment?
Oh,
Nothing
yes,
then to
that was
correct
it. You were under the
Like
gun.
the scenery falling or something?
Yes, old scenery has fallen. I remember Frederick March, we're doing 20th Century, and this was not a regularly scheduled show. It was over at one of the big studios, and a wall started to fall. And I remember Freddie looking like that, seeing it like that, and then someone grabbed hold of the wall, and we went on. We were doing Macbeth. Uta Hagen and I were doing Macbeth on television. And for the first time, they had 4 cameras instead of 3. And in that small studio, they didn't reckon on the boom cable and the camera cable, and I looked out in the middle, and I saw two cameras locked in a deadly embrace with all that cable, and I thought, well, it's got to happen sometime. We're going to be choked to death with all that cable. It was never noticeable on the air. Somehow they got the camera over the mound of cable, got the cable straightened out, we went on with the show. Yeah. But that made it interesting. The hazards made it more interesting.
The actors, I suppose, were alerted to all the possible dangers, and
very
perhaps
sensitive.
more alive than...
More sensitive, that you were prepared.
Now the viewer, of course, had to pay more attention to that tube when those kinds of things were being done, and as they're occasionally done now, than is the case with much of that's on TV.
So predictable. I think that's what you mean, isn't it?
But the television has conditioned our audiences. Their attention span, perhaps, all of us perhaps, our attention span's been lessened. I wanted to ask you about this in terms of the theater, though. Whether, in fact, you notice any difference in the audiences in the theater as a result of television.
Oh yes, they talk more.
What do you mean?
The audience talk among themselves.
Do they?
People say, "Oh, what are you doing?" You know, talking to the umpire on the television set when the.
You mean they talk to the actors?
Yes, that wall is supposed to there, and it's an impermeable wall, but they rustle and they talk as though you just turn up the sound. If you can't hear, turn up the sound. They might say to their neighbor, you know, and a certain kind of spelling out that television does. You know. They tell you what they're going to do. They tell you they're doing it. They tell you you've done it. You know, it's that sort of thing that happens with television, that they think that the audience is so stupid that you've got to tell them several times over, so that lines that would be cliff shakers before in comedy, they don't get it, the subtleties. The ear has been numbed a bit, I think, by television in some places. Although I was in New Haven recently, and there's Henrik Ibsen, the master builder, you know, a very difficult play and obscure in many respects, and the audiences were turned away because they were dying to get back in and listen to something that was so remote from what they see on the tube, and that's how they advertise themselves. Here's an alternative. To the
curious, something that really
people get
engages the mind, becomes an alternative.
And going around to universities, this whole thing about the word, that's what really gets me into radio again too, is that they like to hear words. So read us something, say us something, read some poetry. So my library, I've got stacks of books now that I say, well, here's a good source of material, something, just go around and say, read it, or just memorize it and say it, that they like to hear the writers of the past, whatever, you know. It doesn't have to be something light. It doesn't have to be something heavy. It can be Shakespeare, it can be Yeats, it can be Keats, it can be Frost.
Why do you suppose this is so? Because
hunger.
we've become inundated with things.
Yes, a materialistic aspect of our society, and just the humdrumness of what television has become so much. You know that people don't read as much as they used to, and now I think it's swinging around again. That you can see book sales are increasing. And we did this thing in a church. A bunch of us got together. We said, we put a sign up in front of the church. We said, this is the wide embrace. What is the wide embrace? Come and see. Church on Park Avenue. And we, Kurt Vonnegut, Kevin McCarthy, Ossie and Ruby Davis, and Honor Moore, and Maria Tucci, Nicholas Tucci. We got
It's a happening.
Happening.
Yes.
We got there for 90 minutes. We rang the bell and says, now we're starting. What are you going to do? Listen. And they listened and rapped. And said, do you want to say your thing now? Read your thing. Yes. Oh, that's very nice. And just to listen to words again.
Which words do you choose for your own satisfaction?
Well, I like Shakespeare, and I like Ibsen, and I like the provocative things that nudge you right where you're not so completely aware. You know, some things that stir you, that move you, rather than pacify you.
Was it Shakespeare that drew you off the Owatonna, Minnesota?
That's right.
And into the world of theater?
That's right.
It was?
It was Shakespeare, yes.
What contact did you have with Shakespeare or with theater at all growing up? It was Owatonna, it must be a small town. I don't know where it is.
Well, there were 2 theaters there.
Were there?
Yes.
So you saw theater as a youngster then?
Yes, because, my goodness, how old I am. Because movies was just becoming the thing, at least in Owatonna. For a nickel, you went to the Gem and the Bijou to see a movie, and of course, they had no sound in those days.
Yeah.
It might have been a
I can
piano
recall
in the
that
pit.
very well,
That's not so long ago, is it?
No.
And so I saw theater, and that really grabbed me, as they say today. That there they were.
What kind
up
of
there.
theater was it? Do you remember?
Probably very ordinary. I remember his modern dress. It may have been some of the plays from the early 20s or something like
Touring
that. Although
companies, I suppose?
could have been stock companies. And there was Getting Gertie's Garter, and there was the Gorilla, and there were some very shabby plays that were being done, along with some good ones. But
But you wanted to be a part of it?
Yes, I wanted to be an actor, and I became one. Thank God.
How did you become one?
That way.
Just
Working in the YMCA and working in church and working in school and so forth in plays, and then with the Shakespearean company. We did Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet. I played
Touring,
Guildenstern,
didn't you?
touring, and played Peter in Romeo and Juliet. What part does that play? Oh, he's a servant to the nurse. Yes, it was a very small part.
Did you have any training in acting?
No, that was my training. That was my training.
That'd be tough to do nowadays, wouldn't it?
Probably
to walk in
impossible.
as an actor,
yeah.
impossible?
That's why we have so many fine schools. We have very many fine schools. I know because I've been around the country and I go to them, the universities.
Have you ever felt the lack of training? Your career shows no evidence of it.
Well,
obviously.
no. Finally, when I wanted to get better at what I was doing, I studied voice and I studied speech. And there's some very good speech teachers and very good voice teachers in this town. And I studied with some very good people. And if I'm not better, it's my fault, not theirs.
Yes.
Very good people here in New York. Some very fine schools. And that's where one ought to go today, rather than attempt to do what I did, to work for $15 a week in Okmulgee, Oklahoma.
Do you think it would be better to have the training than to have the practical experience in doing it?
I think so. I think so, because it took me so long. It took me so long. Many, many, many years I waited around, doing these odd jobs.
What'd you do while you were waiting? You came,
That was
you
the theater.
toured
What's
with
the
the
theater?
Shakespeare Theater, and then that was in the South and Southwest, as I
Yes,
recall.
and then I was in the Federal Theater.
During the Depression.
During
years,
the Depression.
yeah.
And,
That
they
was
did
a great break, I suppose.
Yes, it was for actors and also for audiences, because many, many people had never seen a play on stage, saw it for the first time, and that was part about it, just to open up cultural life in this country. And, that was sorely needed, and I think we're reaching it again, is that something has got to happen with the theater in this country. And it's happening outside of the metropolitan centers, I think. I remember attending a conference in Chicago, it must have been 1935 or something like that, and from all over the country, what they called the tributary theater, and said that the tributary theater will feed Broadway. That's where it's coming from in the future. We said, so, support it. That's where the writers are coming from, and the actors and the directors and the technicians are coming from. It's the other way around. Now Broadway is going out. The flow is going the other way. I went to Richmond, Virginia. Not that that's proof of that the Eastern culture is spreading to the hinterlands, but many theaters are started, in various parts of. You were in San Francisco. You worked with ACT out there. That's a very fine theater, and they have a fine company in Minneapolis and Atlanta, and New Orleans, and
Why,
Schenectady.
spreading out, Broadway's always been the Mecca. It has, for many years, drawn upon these tributaries, as you say, and now it's exploding outward. What's wrong with Broadway?
There's no gold here. The gold is over there. There's gold out there on them there hills, not on
that's
Broadway
where the tickets
anymore.
are.
Yes, and that's where the career is. It's not possible to have a career on Broadway anymore today. No one has a career on Broadway anymore. You occasionally, now I was in something that lasted 3 weeks in June of this year. Now, if that I depended on that for my living, I'd starve to death, or I'd have to change my occupation. So I find it elsewhere, and most actors do today too, and directors and writers. Many plays never see the light of Broadway and have a nice, long, comfortable life away from Broadway.
And many open and close very quickly, of course, here, because
Yeah.
in many cases they're not given much of a chance to succeed. The
roll of the dice.
cost is too great, isn't it, to keep it going and until it might succeed.
That
although-
very fine gentleman, Max Gordon, who was one of the most important, prominent producers up until the 40s. I met him at the theater the other night, and my sister Eileen was a big hit. And he said, $10,000 it cost to do. And he said, Born Yesterday. I thought the theater was going crazy because it cost $30,000 to do. And at the play we were at, I said, I figured this one's about $250,000. He says, more likely three.
Really?
$300,000 to do a play, and he did Born Yesterday. That was an enormous smash hit.
That's right.
$30,000. That was to put it on the stage. So now you look at the theater elsewhere, where it's not as expensive to do a play.
Yeah.
And so you can afford to do The Master Builder and make money at it.
Do you want to stay active in stage
Yeah,
work?
yeah.
Will you follow the regional theater then as a means of doing this?
Very likely. I receive invitations around, and some of them, because it's so far away, I don't accept them, you know, unless it's something that I dearly want to do. And I say, well, then I make the sacrifice the other way. I will go to Owatonna, Minnesota to do
For so
King
many
Lear.
years, you played such a wide variety of roles, beginning, as you've said, with Shakespeare, and all kinds of roles in the theater and Broadway and so forth. And yet you became best known in a very stylized role on The Defenders on TV. That is to say, we all knew who E.G. Marshall was. He was a defender, an attorney. Has that identification with you in a given role been anything of a handicap?
No, no, I thought it would be, because the very first part I played after that was in The Chase, a movie. But it was a very expensive movie, and I played a rather unnice person. And I thought, well, that's quite a switch. See what happens. No repercussions at all.
I said that because I saw you in Nash at 9,
Aha.
a wordsicle.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, what's this lawyer doing, reading,
Yeah.
Playing Ogden Nash? It seemed
Yeah.
not to fit.
Yeah.
That was my attitude when I went into the theater. I enjoyed both you and Nash.
Yeah.
But I should think that you are so identified in the minds of so many people who are not regular theater goers that would be something of a handicap too.
Well, no, people like to do the opposite. They say, aha, that's original casting.
Yeah.
Someone gave me a script the other day, and they said, it's the part of the Jewish cab driver. And I said, well, fine. And then I read the script, and it's a part of a 75-year-old man, very New York and very Jewish, according to the author. And I said, yes, that is a switch, but I don't think I can make it. I don't think I can be a convincing 75-year-old New Yorker. I mean, it'd take an awful lot of work and makeup, and I don't think I'm ready for that. I want to do this other show, this other play that I have, where I won't. But at another opportunity, I might say, yes, that'd be fun to try. So that people don't say, well, it's not a lawyer part, you know, they say, well, let's try and see what'll happen, because he's an actor, let's see what happens.
Being so closely identified as a lawyer for the 5 years you played in The Defenders, did you find people coming to you for legal advice?
Oh, yes.
Or were you giving it?
I was giving it to lawyers.
Were you?
No,
You do get, I suppose, very deep into that kind of a situation, do you not, where
well, you become
law
interested.
becomes a part of your
You
life in
become
a sense.
interested in it
You
because
do.
you're dealing with it every day, and you say, "Oh my, that's fascinating! What a fascinating case that is." Then you read some of the cases, and you read some of the arguments. And say, "Oh my, that is fascinating!" So you get more and more drawn into it. And I went to the new school, and I took a couple of courses down there.
You did take courses in law.
Yeah, because
Just curiosity, it didn't...
the interest. I said, "Yes, I want to know more about that." And so I built up a very small library over those years. And I became a member of a couple of organizations, and I used to speak before law groups
What
around
did you
the country.
say to law groups?
Well, as a citizen, it's like when I talk about health insurance, I say, I'm a health consumer. And that's what they call us today, that we consume health. And they say, yes, we sure are consuming our health at a rapid rate. Is that say, I'm a layman, I'm a citizen. No, an ordinary person looks at the law, the way you handle law. And I said, what people tell me, because they talk to me, they feel that they can talk to me or they can't talk to you because they think it's going to cost them a lot of money. To me, they can talk for nothing.
Did your roles in The Defenders as a lawyer and your role in The Bold Ones as a doctor sensitize you at
Yes.
all as a citizen and a citizen's
Oh, yes.
obligations?
Yes.
Really?
Oh, yes. Because I began to take what we say positions on certain issues about judicial reform. I used to go around talking to civic groups about that. And then with the medical thing, with health insurance, they said, we've got to find some way to bring order out of this chaos, some way to prevent these disasters that happen to families. Principal cause of bankruptcies in this country personal bankruptcy is health care costs. Some way of insuring against this, because not all of us get sick, not all of us go to the hospital. When we do get sick, 80, 90% of the time, nature takes care of it. But that one time when it takes the mortgage money, the college money, the car money away from a family, so we must find some way of insuring against that catastrophe that happens to it, and also to improve the health care and improve the accessibility and the availability of health care in this country, because it is a big problem, and even the medical profession recognizes that and is trying to do something.
But you as one whose name is readily recognized, do you feel you have a larger obligation than any citizen to use your influence as E.G. Marshall?
Well, I appreciate the privilege of the opportunity, you see.
But it's everyone's obligation.
Well, it ought to be.
Yes.
But you can't always do as much as you would like to do. But I think the consumer ought to speak up, and he is beginning to speak up, and that's what we're hearing now. Is that, so why? Who would ever dream of saying to a doctor, wait a minute, doctor, why are you charging me that much? Why are you prescribing this? I said, you don't like what I'm doing? Go to another doctor. You wouldn't dream of it. I say, you have the right to audition doctors. You have the right to audition lawyers, because you're going to pay them. He's working for you. You're paying him to keep you well or get you well. Yeah. You're paying the lawyer to get you out of trouble or prevent trouble. And so you have the right to ask him, say, how much are you going to charge me for this? Say, it's too much. And they say, well, go someplace else. Say, all right, thank you, I will. But people don't do that. They finally get the bill to say, for what? And so health insurance could take care of most of our health care costs, of course, just as automobile insurance or fire insurance or burglary insurance and so on. We can insure against it, because I think the doctor deserves a fair shake too, and other health care people. They deserve all they get, because it's a long, hard road to become a doctor or a nurse or a dentist or an optician.
Mr. Marshall, we have about a minute left, and I want to ask you just one final question. Given the interest you've just displayed in being a doctor or in being a lawyer, and the knowledge which you've gained in these roles and so forth, have you ever had any occasion to regret that you chose to be an actor instead of a doctor or a lawyer or something else?
No, I haven't. I like what I'm doing. I like my life. I'm smug about myself.
What are the satisfactions of your life as an actor?
Well, I do many things. I go many places. I meet many people. It isn't an ordinary person. I had the great privilege of sitting down to chat with Chief Justice Berger. And he's, I think, a fine man and a fine judge and a fine lawyer, and a great American. Now, that wouldn't happen to me if I were, what, a garage mechanic likely, although garage mechanics are a very necessary part, and I just came from a garage about an hour ago, and we depend upon them. I'm not putting down garage mechanics, but I say I've had many opportunities in my life as an actor, and I've appreciated every one.
So the world isn't all make-believe. No. Thank you very much.